They say hindsight is 20/20, but sometimes the thing holding you back isn't in your past. It's right in front of your face, and you just can't see it. That was true for me, and it was true for my daughter as well. We were both pushing hard, trying to focus, trying to grow, trying to get where we wanted to be, wherever that was. For her, it was enjoying reading like her friends. For me, it was peace, clarity, and leadership without constant pressure. But something invisible was slowing each of us down, and we didn't even know it yet until we saw it clearly. This episode is about that. It's about vision, not just eyesight, but insight. It's about bandwidth, what happens when your mental, emotional, and spiritual capacity gets stretched to the limit. And it's about the power of removing just one thing so you can finally move forward. I didn't know something so small could make such a big difference. But sometimes it's not about trying harder. It's about seeing clearer. My daughter was born at 24 weeks old, weighing less than 2 pounds, fighting every day for survival. And by the grace of God, she made it. But one of the long-term risks for babies born that early is something called retinopathy of prematurity, a condition that can lead to blindness if oxygen levels aren't managed just right. Thankfully, the danger passed, but something still lingered. Over the years, she struggled with reading, not because she couldn't read the words, but because she couldn't comprehend them. It was frustrating for her, for my sister who was raising her. And honestly, it was starting to affect her confidence in many, many areas. Then came the eye exam. My sister and her husband decided to take her to the doctor because something didn't seem right. And the doctor said she actually has a pretty significant stigmatism, which meant everything was blurry to her. And then it all made sense. Every time she looked at a page, her brain had to work overtime just to see the letters correctly. Could you imagine how frustrating that could be? So by the time she was done reading the sentence, she had no mental energy left to actually process what it meant. It was a bandwidth problem. So the doctor gave her glasses. And in a moment, everything changed for her. Suddenly, she could read without squinting, without rereading everything, without guessing what it was saying. She had more capacity, more clarity, and instead of dreading reading, she started loving it, and her nose was always in a book. One tiny adjustment, and everything changed. Her glasses didn't make her smarter, they just removed the interference. And once that happened, she started thriving. And then it hit me. That's what I'd been missing too. I didn't need any more motivation. I had plenty of that. I didn't need another habit. I had plenty of those too. I just needed to free up some bandwidth, to stop wasting the mental energy on things I was avoiding. For me, it wasn't blurry text. It was blurry relationships, blurry responsibilities, conversations I didn't want to have, responsibilities I didn't want to take care of. I would sit at my desk, staring at paperwork, dreading the phone call I needed to make, or avoiding the report I needed to write. Scrolling on my phone instead, convincing myself that I would just get to it later. Right now, I'm going to indulge. I was checking boxes. I fooled myself into thinking that I was actually being productive. But I was just being busy. Every unfinished task was stealing from me. Every avoided conversation was robbing my system of energy better spent on things that really mattered. And the worst part is I thought I was actually managing it. That one thing I kept avoiding was stealing my bandwidth. What's that thing for you? What are you avoiding? The truth? I didn't need to work harder. We don't need to necessarily work harder. Sometimes we do. What we need to do is clear the bandwidth by dealing with that one thing. Not a bunch of things. Usually it's just one thing. Maybe you need to call your dad. I know I do. Maybe you need to change the oil in your car, rotate your tires. I'm probably behind on that too. Maybe you're in a relationship that should have ended a long time ago. Also have that experience. 9 times out of 10, that thing we're so afraid of, it's not actually that big a deal. We just made it big by putting it off for so long and telling ourselves we couldn't do it. But once I did it, and once you do it, the focus comes back. The energy returns. Hell, even the sky looks bluer. My daughter's glasses changed the way she saw the world, literally. But what about me? What was the one thing I was squinting through every single day? Pretending that I could see clearly, when deep down I knew something was off. For me, it was a conversation that I knew I needed to have with my pastor. Some things had started to come up, some concerns that I had that I just wasn't saying anything about because I was afraid. So I kept putting off this conversation. Every time I went to church, every time I saw him, every single time I prayed, this thought was nagging in the back of my brain, just tickling me there, telling me I needed this conversation, taking up space, stealing bandwidth. I kept thinking, maybe it'll get better on its own. But the truth is, and we all know this is the truth, is that it never does. And when these things aren't dealt with, they don't stay contained. They bleed into every single other area of our life. I started venting to a few guys in an online group. I would talk to my friends about it all the time. And finally, one of them said, "Brother, this isn't venting. It's borderline gossip. You need to either have that conversation or stop bringing it up." And I knew they were right. And then the moment came. One day at church, after it ended, I walked in the sanctuary. It was empty. I turned the corner, and there was the pastor. Just him and me. He smiled and said, "Hey, Andrew, what's up?" And I knew this was my moment. God had provided it for me. And I said, "I've been carrying a lot. There's a conversation I've been meaning to have." And he looked at me, "With who?" And I said, "With you." And he said, "Well, now's as good a time as any." So we talked. It wasn't easy. Hard questions, honest answers. He's good at those. A few awkward silences. But when it was over, I walked out of the sanctuary and felt a 50-ton weight lifted off my back. My mind was clear. My energy had returned. I could finally breathe again. All because I closed that tab. As a chiropractor, most of the people I see are in some form of pain. Neck pain, headaches, lower back pain. But it's not always the visible kind. Not always the kind that shows up on x-rays or exams. But it's the kind that wears you down day by day, hour by hour, week by week, month by month, year by year, and sometimes even decade by decade. The kind that makes everything harder. Sleeping sucks. Working is harder. Thinking takes more work. Even breathing takes more than the average. And the pain can get so loud, so constant, that people start shutting the world out. Not because they're weak, but because they're tired of pretending that they are weak. And I get it. Because pain just doesn't live in your back or in your joints. It lives in your mind too. It lives in your spirit. It lives in your soul. And when there's interference, even small, hidden interference, it can keep you from becoming who you're meant to be and doing what you're meant to do. So in my 15 years of practice, I've seen a lot. But every now and then, something happens that reminds me how powerful healing can actually be. When the interference and the pain is removed, it can change people's lives. There was Sister, the cranky nun who was in her late 80s. She wasn't angry because of her pain. She was heartbroken because she couldn't kneel at the altar to pray to her Savior. That was her sacred moment, and the pain had stolen it from her. After a few weeks of chiropractic care, she shuffled into my office with tears streaming down her face. And she said to me, "This morning, I was able to kneel at church." She gave me a hug, the only one I ever got from her, and pretty soon, I was crying too. Then there was the young man who came to see me. He was in his early 20s with lower back pain, pretty common in his line of work. But during the consultation, he casually mentioned that he and his wife had been trying to get pregnant. with no success. They were young, healthy. This should have been a no-brainer. But they got no diagnosis, no explanation, just months and months of discouragement. So we started addressing the pressure on his nervous system, specifically in his lower back. And then a few months later, he walked into my office with a big cheesy grin, and he said, "Hey, thanks, Doc, for getting my wife pregnant." Chiropractic humor. Gotta love it. And then there was a 2-year-old little boy. A few days earlier, he'd gone from joyful and wild to withdrawn, cranky, barely eating, not sleeping, keeping his parents up all night. But no one could figure out what was wrong. So they brought him to me. After one adjustment, that little boy immediately took a nap, had a bowel movement for the first time in days. And he slept all night long and woke up the next morning smiling, asking for pancakes. When he came into my office the next day, it was like a different kid. These were people whose bodies weren't functioning like they were designed to until the interference was removed. When the nervous system is under pressure, nothing functions the way it should. And when our bandwidth is taken up by pain, we don't function as we should. And just like those bodies were carrying pain that they didn't know how to explain, especially that little boy doesn't know how to communicate pain, just like that, some of you are walking around with spiritual misalignments, emotional inflammation, and mental pressure. You don't need another hustle strategy. You need clarity. You need alignment. You need room to hear the voice of God again. That's what happened with Sister. That's what happened with that young man. And that's what happened with that little boy too. And with me. And it can happen for you. Because healing doesn't always look like fireworks. Sometimes it's just about bandwidth. Sometimes freedom is quiet. It's subtle. It's the pain that's no longer stealing your sleep. The tension that's no longer clouding your prayers. The relationship that's no longer draining your clarity. And that's what I want for you. Not a brand new life, just the space to live the one you already have with strength, clarity, and peace. We carry pain. We carry avoidance. We carry unresolved conversations, unknown diagnoses, buried fears, every single one of us. And they start to interfere with everything else in our lives. That's what glasses did for my daughter. They didn't change who she was. They simply removed the interference. They gave her bandwidth. And that's what the conversation with my pastor did for me too. It didn't fix everything. I still had plenty of problems. It just cleared the mental traffic jam and gave me room to actually breathe again. And maybe that's what you need too. Not a total life overhaul, not some perfect system, just a little clarity, just enough space to hear God's voice again, to see what's really in front of you. You can't heal if all the signals are blocked, and you can't move forward if your brain is stuck. Buffering. So here's 5 ways to free up some bandwidth. First of all, name the thing you're avoiding, write it down, say it out loud. Stop letting it swirl inside your head. Today, do one hard thing. Pick the easiest of the hard things, tackle it, and build momentum. Number 3, use physical action to reset. Go for a walk, take a cold shower, do something that reminds your body that you're not stuck. Number 4, talk to someone you trust. Say the thing, even if it's messy. Shame loses power when it is spoken. And number 5, thank God in advance. Even before the situation changes, thank Him for what He's already doing. Gratitude will shift your perspective. This isn't just about productivity advice. This is soul survival. You don't need a bigger brain. You need fewer burdens. You don't need a new life. You just need to clear the interference so you can show up with clarity, capacity, and peace. And listen, if this connected with you and you want more than just insight, if you're ready to build habits that actually stick, I'd love to walk this journey with you. Check the link down in the description for my 5 daily habits resource. It's totally free, no strings attached. Or if you're ready for more, you can learn about my coaching system there too. Because sometimes freedom doesn't start with a breakthrough, it starts with a break from distraction. So if this spoke to you at all, please like the video and share it with your friends. And I'll talk to you next time.
So if you like this content, please give it a rating, a review, and share it with your friends. Also, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about me and what I'm all about and what I can maybe do for you, check out my website at thedangerousgentleman.org. That's thedangerousgentleman.org. Thank you for listening.